Hello! I'm sitting in the one spot of my house that has like vertical tiles because I thought that it would be cool if the background was on theme for the video. My husband and I have been fixing up our mid-century split level for over a year now, and one thing that has caused maybe the most hang-ups has been choosing tile. We need tile for our kitchen floor, for the kitchen backsplash, for the bathroom walls, for the laundry room floor. And as I was hunting for tile for these projects, I realized either I am really picky or these options suck, or a mix of both. As many of you have come to know, I'm a color advocate for home interiors. So as I was looking for tiles, I was really looking for color, and if not super colorful, then authentic materials. Because our budget is pretty limited, we had to use the economical route, which was a big box store. And as I was scrolling online on all the different websites, I was struck by the same thing over and over again. Almost everything is printed porcelain or ceramic, and also neutral. If you wanted something more unique, it was usually green or blue, and usually also triple the price, if not more. Or if it was an interesting pattern, it was often printed in a way that was like really crazy. Like this one is a long rectangle tile with 8 squares printed on it. The grout lines in between the 8 squares are also printed. So it's just like one solid piece made to look like 8 separate tiles. And when I say printed, sometimes I would pick up a tile, like if I went into one of the big box stores, I would pick up a tile and I'd like hold it up close to my face and I could see the pixels of the image that they used to print onto it. Like, not like blocky pixels, but you could kind of see the fuzziness to it, and you could see a repeating pattern. The current standard trend for kitchens and bathrooms, from my perspective and what I've seen, and I think many of you would agree, that it's a marble style printed ceramic or porcelain.
America has become a monotone hellscape.
100% agree.
When's the last time you went to a buddy's bathroom?
Yesterday.
I'm guaranteed 9 out of 10 buddies, same bathroom.
Gray
and
slop.
white. Gray and white. Real original.
Real original.
Every house is cookie cutter.
Yeah, every car looks the same, every building looks the same, every house looks the same.
Those who have the funds and the budget are using real marble tiles, small or large scale, but those who don't, which is the bracket that I'm in, are using the printed ceramic that is made to look like it's real marble. It reminds me kind of those DIYers who were painting marble onto their counters. Like it'd be like a Formica counter and they were pouring like a glaze over and then they were drawing like gray veins of marble onto it. Not to poo-poo that, but that bothers me. I hate it. There is a tradition and like historical practice of painting things to look like stone. So I'm not saying that's not an artistic technique, but I think in the way it's not used to highlight the craft. It's used more to pretend that it is stone. Noah Daniel has a really good video about authentic materials, and the way he explains it and describes it really resonated with me, and I was like, oh yeah, that's why it bothers me so much. So he articulates it a lot better. Like I mentioned, for us personally, one factor that really affected our design decisions was budget. So for our kitchen floor, we ended up using free quarry tiles that my dad salvaged from his workplace. So that ended up being one decision made easy for us because we went with the absolutely free option. We wouldn't have used them if we didn't like them. So, but it has been funny. I think a few people have come over the house and asked, when are you going to replace this floor? And I was like, no, we just installed that. Because the style of it is a little bit older. It doesn't look modern. And also it's the exact style of tiles and flooring that would be in a kitchen in a restaurant. But I love a square grid, and it calls back a little bit to the tiles that were used here around the wood stove and on the ground. And so it kind of felt like it was adding back into the history of the house that worked well with elements that were already here. The backsplash decision, however, would not be made so easy. From a young age, my parents exposed us kids to art and design from our cultural roots. My mom's Indonesian family is referred to there as Peranakan. To explain it simply to my friends growing up as a kid, I would just say that she's Chinese Indonesian. If I was ever asked why we had so much Chinese influence in our traditions or our home, to fully explain that might take its own video because it's kind of complicated. Peranakan culture is a subculture which stems from a diaspora of men coming from China thousands of years ago to work, mostly in different parts of South Asia. So it's like this unique subculture that is partially Chinese and partially native. So these pockets of people started to grow in sections of South Asia and became its own subculture. Peranakan were often known for being wealthy, having a lot of business with Europeans, and then being very influenced by European colonizers to each country. For example, in Indonesia, that would be the Dutch culture. Flipping through this book, The Peranakan Chinese Home, I realized in a lot of the reception halls and courtyards and even the ancestral halls had the tiles that were very similar to the quarry tiles that we put into the kitchen. They are most likely terracotta, but the color system is pretty much the same as a quarry tile, and the texture is very similar. So I didn't even do that on purpose, but looking through, I was excited to see that. I can't really remember when my obsession with Peranakan tiles started. I feel like it was a long time ago, but I can't pinpoint it. But I'm very inspired by the patterns and the motifs that are held within a tile. About 4 years ago, on our way to Indonesia, Gavin and I and a friend of ours went through Singapore and we stayed there a few days, and I got to go and see the shop houses in Juchiat. To describe this aesthetic, again, I'll refer to the Peranakan Chinese home, which I have right here. European-style stucco ornamentation that included draping swags often complemented Peranakan Chinese glazed tile motifs of colorful birds and flowers, as well as richly Chinese symbolic motifs such as deer, dragons, and qilin. The mixing of European aesthetic traditions with Chinese and Malay patterns created an architectural idiom referred to as Chinese Baroque, an extravaganza of infilled exterior ornamentation. This idiom is occasionally an incongruous combining of patterns, materials, and motifs, which is judged by some as more dissonant than aesthetically harmonious. Like this quote stated, some view the style as dissonant and more chaotic. The color combinations are really bright and saturated and complementary or contrasting, and this style has definitely fallen out of popularity completely over the last 100 years due to the sentiment of design changing from decorative to more practical and functional. These designs really called to me. I really enjoy these types of patterns and colors and textures, like I was saying, but there's something about the mixture of European and Chinese and Southeast Asian culture all kind of pushed together. This is crazy. I'm getting emotional. I think what makes it like have such an impact on me is because it feels like me. Like that's what I am. Not to go on a tangent, but growing up, it is kind of like weird. You're in this confusing shell of being American, being white, but also being Indonesian, but also Chinese. And there's just this distance of not having so much of an understanding of where you have been, where you've come from. This video is about tiles. I need to get back on track. To quote Knapp once again, talking about these tiles and the style of architecture that was used in this area in Singapore, wherever they appeared, such eclectic design borrowings created a distinct vernacular aesthetic that has worn well over time in spite of having fallen out of fashion for nearly half a century. In residential as well as commercial buildings in late 1920s and 30s in Singapore especially, interest turned to Art Deco designs, followed by a wave of post-war functionalism. These architectural trends not only affected new construction, but also were applied in the modernization and general updating of some old terrace houses throughout the island. Others that were abandoned became dilapidated and ripe for later demolition. When we bought this house, I knew I wanted Peranakan tiles somewhere. And once I figured out that the backsplash was the place for it, I went searching for these tiles with high hopes. And as you can imagine, the results were dismal. Some local shops in Singapore said they had some, but weren't available online. I finally found some on Etsy similar to my ideal and ordered some samples. They came from India, so the shipping was very high.
I think Peranakan is
Number
just...
2.
Oh, I like that one.
I think this is my favorite. Well, I haven't seen the other one yet.
What if we use that
Look
as
at
a
that.
Favorite so far.
Yeah. I liked them enough when they came in. I was very optimistic and was talking to Gavin about ordering bulk of the tiles. But then I kept laying awake at night thinking about how they weren't exactly what I was looking for. I really craved that hand-painted majolica and the Art Nouveau inspired design, that sculptural low relief and unique texture. And all this I craved, but I knew that with the budget I had, I could never afford. Nowadays, the majority of tiles are made in factories, printed to look hand-painted or like a natural material. Factories produce faster and therefore quality takes a dive, which makes them more affordable for the general public. The video by Sheehan Kirk, hopefully I pronounced that right, called How Did the World Get So Ugly, really outlines how ornamentation dropped off after the modern era. Modernity coincides with convenience, and that's now what we prioritize over beauty. It feels like we're trapped in a sort of vicious cycle of maybe getting a house that was just flipped, for example, and the tiles that were installed look like they are low quality. Maybe they're printed to look like marble, so I want to redo it. But that's a very expensive process, and with my limited budget and going through the process, in the end, I end up only being able to afford a low quality tile, and thus the cycle continues. Some family of mine recently was selling their house, and they were encouraged to redo 2 bathrooms to improve the sellability of the house. The bathrooms were thought to be outdated and they had been designed in the 60s, I think. And since the purpose of redoing the bathrooms was resellability, what do you think they did? What has current society deemed to be the most resellable bathroom? That's right! The printed marble tile bathroom. So that's what they went with. And during some potential buyer walkthroughs, some of them were saying things like, oh, we would have to redo this anyway. We don't like how they did this bathroom in the powder room. Meaning all the work and money had been for nothing anyway. I've spoken about this before in past videos, that we as a society need to get away from the trap of thinking that we need to design our homes for resale. But sadly, faced with reality, that's what a lot of our homes have become, just an investment. What I really want is for my home to be an expression of myself, of my style. When I'm in my home, I want it to bring me joy. And personally, a gray and white kitchen would do the opposite of that. In an article by the Peranakan Association of Singapore, they talk about the preservation of Peranakan tiles. In the late 1970s and 1980s, pre-war shop houses, terrace houses, and bungalows were demolished to make way for new buildings and infrastructure developments. Many such tiles found in these old buildings ended up in dump heaps. Passionate about Singapore history since young, Victor Lim, who owns tile company Astor by Kyra, then in his 20s, painstakingly searched for such tiles at places where old buildings were being demolished. He researched and preserved them for his own collection. He said the fun of collecting lies not only in the visual aesthetics of the durable, beautifully glazed tiles, but also in hunting down lost pieces that make up a tableau. 30 plus years on, heritage tiles are still Victor's passion. A favorite pastime is to roam around Singapore looking for these tiles. He also has contractor friends who alert him to heritage shop houses and bungalows about to be torn down or renovated so that he can save the tiles. I think all around the world there's this push and pull between historical preservation and urban planning or necessary housing. And as the world changes and grows, we also must change and grow, but there is something important and beautiful about not letting all historical significance be buried. We can see how modernism affected architecture, and then postmodernism, and then now contemporary. I don't know what you call this era of architecture. Tiles used to be a work of craftsmanship, artistry, and design. In this contemporary age, we've lost sight of those things. A lot of that has to do with affordability and accessibility. There are definitely tiles still made today with some artistry and specific aesthetics in mind. They just take a lot more time to save up for. I feel we can all fall into the trap of trying to make things feel more expensive, which is why we paint plastic or ceramic to look like stone, because we wish we could afford stone. But I believe leaning into the budgetary restrictions and making your own artistry out of something more simple. And that, in the end, will produce something timeless rather than something that will be replaced in 10 years in the name of updating. Maybe you guys can let me know if this trend is happening all over the world. I kind of feel like it is when I go on a real estate website and look through and I click on a bathroom or a kitchen. All the ones that have been newly renovated have been turned into this gray stone, granite, and marble bathroom. Sometimes real stone, sometimes fake stone. But the effect is pretty similar either way. It's sort of a lack of depth and character and culture. I think that's the saddest part of this type of design, is that we can't really see where it's come from. We can't really see, there's no story in it at all, except maybe the story of how we've lost cultural identity in design. I decided that I will be making the backsplash tiles for my kitchen. As an artist, I know that I have the ability to do it, and I can make them exactly how I want them to be with the help of some friends. Then when Gavin and I are in the kitchen and looking at it, we'll have joy looking at the pattern because of its beauty. We'll have pride in the finished project, and we'll be reminded of the amazing community that came together to help achieve our goal. And I think this is what design should be. Money drives so much of our decision making, and that's out of necessity. But if we can make decisions based on beauty, joy, and connection, imagine how life could feel. I'm not saying everyone needs to go make your own backsplash, but what I am saying is that you should take your time. Don't be swayed by the convenience atmosphere. Kick marketability to the curb and find what you love. I'll be documenting my tile making journey. That's going to be a multi-part for sure because it's taken a while. It's a lot of work. As you can imagine, that's why people buy tiles and pay a lot of money for it. So what are your guys' thoughts on this age of marketability and convenience? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
The life of Rosalind is the life for